Everybody, this is Allie Backscheider from Forward Party, and I am joined by my friend and state lead from Rhode Island, Jim Palmisano. Did I say that right?
Yes, perfect, Allie. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and to share your story. Just to get started, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you
Sure,
from? What do you do?
absolutely. I like to say that I'm from Southern Rhode Island. That's the bottom 30 miles of Rhode Island. So I live in Richmond, Rhode Island, and I'm a native Rhode Islander, and lived in the state for, I'll just say, over 50 years, and work for a Fortune 500 company globally. So I have the opportunity to have an outside-in perspective on things, supporting all of Europe. And I have two children, and my wife and I have been together for over 16 years.
Wow,
And yeah,
congratulations.
so
That's
yep,
amazing.
yep. And she's sticking around, which is great. So yeah, and also we'll get into a little bit more, but have just recently completed a 2-year term as a town council vice president for Richmond, Rhode Island. So
Wow. So you're not busy at all.
a lot of coffee, which I'll be drinking throughout this conversation. So thank you.
That's a requirement. Well, wow, that's amazing. So what got you into politics? Have you always been interested in politics? Like, what's the history there?
So I've always been interested in political science, getting involved with politics. Always, as a citizen, I felt it was not just a right but a requirement to be engaged in, the electoral system. Always making sure to exercise my duty in primaries and elections. And then moving to the town here, the impetus for me getting involved in the actual political arena was as a volunteer. I volunteered for our Economic Development Commission in Richmond. We had a financial town meeting quite a few years back, and the in our tri-town, we have a regional school district for the tri-towns, and there was a question of funding problems and budget, and the reality is that we needed more economic development in our town to offset the tax base. So I got involved and I volunteered and worked with that group, and quickly learned that if you really wanted to have an impact in making the decisions that could move your town in the right direction, those decisions were made at the council level. So I decided to declare my candidacy and run. And this was in 2019, which was the election. So I was sworn in January of 2020. And at that time, still a registered Republican, but ran as an independent because I just felt strongly that, for two things. One, I wanted people to, perhaps it was naive, but to get to know me as a candidate, who I was and what I stood for, and not just assume that if I had a letter next to my name, that meant I was monolithic on all those issues, because I truly am, conservative on some things and liberal on other things. So that was my hope, that the voters would get to know who I was.
Mhm.
And the second factor was, um, I don't need to remind anyone of the toxic situation of our national politics at that time. And I didn't feel like the Republican Party, even at that time, aligned the way I saw things. So I ran as an independent. And, it was one of those cases where we had 5 seats up and 5 people declared. So I was in. And that's how I got into it. So
Wow.
that was my beginning.
Wow, that's amazing and good for you. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to do that, and I'm sure, I don't know, I'm sure that was pretty difficult at times. So it's just awesome that you have stuck with it. That leads me to my next question. What brought you to Forward? Like, why are we so lucky to have your time and your energy and talents?
Thank you. And I have to say, my experience has been working with such a wonderful, passionate, engaging group of individuals from across the political spectrum. And that is what Forward is. Diverse opinions moving in the right direction. So it was a very interesting time. I was struggling because more and more the rhetoric I was hearing from the Republican Party was moving in a direction that I didn't agree with. um, I looked across the different types of political parties, and I didn't fit. There were always factors or requirements that just said, you know what, that doesn't work for me. You can be this, but then you have to believe that, or you can come here, but we need you to say this. And I didn't agree with that. And I knew that, I have a lot of friends who are Democrats. Many of my family members are Democrats, whom I respect. It's just that that's not who I am. That's not my home. I've always been a center-right moderate Republican since the day I could vote. But when I found Serve America movement and found what Sam was about, it resonated with me, and it gave me an opportunity to be part of an organization which were like-minded people trying to find solutions, trying to work together, irrespective of a letter next to someone's name. So I signed up for Sam, and I actually spoke with Courtney. And what was ironic was it was about 3 months before the merger. So here I am, brand new, excited about this merger, or about this new organization, not knowing, of course, what is happening in the background, because there had to be that conversation that I wasn't privy to. And so I'm part of Sam, and then everything goes dark, and I'm like, well, where's the activity of Sam? Where are the Twitter posts? And there was nothing. So I was in, but a little bit confused about what was going on, but really excited to do it. It was just the time that I joined. So that's how I came in. And then with the announcement of the merger, I'm a happy Forward Party supporter today.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, interesting timing on all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I joined Forward Party Legacy before we merged, and yeah, it was just a crazy exciting time. And yeah, we're just really happy that you stuck with us, because we're doing some really, really cool shit. So I know we were talking a little bit earlier, but if you don't mind, you were sharing a really, timely and personal issue that's facing your community today. Can you kind of explain that again for me, if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll frame it in terms that'll be, germane to anyone who may be listening to this. We oftentimes look at national politics and think that that's what's going to change our lives. But the adage that politics is local is a time proven cliche, right? I mean, it exists for a reason, because it's true. So what we're seeing here in our community is a concerted effort in our community, far right-leaning groups to insert their individuals at the council level and at school committee level. So changing the fabric of our community from the bottom up. And what's challenging, I mean, Rhode Island is overall, one would call it a blue state, right? So we have a lot of most of our elected officials fall under the Democratic banner. But in Southern Rhode Island, even though it's not a geographically distance-wise state, we are much more on the Republican side of the spectrum, the southern part of the state. And what we're seeing is this takeover, essentially, of groups that are fighting against things that have been talking points nationally, whether it be CRT or whether it be gender issues, and having conversations around that. And as a parent who has children in the school system, who I've had conversations with them, asking them if this is a concern or an issue, or and it's not happening, but it's made to appear as if it's an issue, which revs up the base. We've seen this before, and what it's doing is it's changing that level, and it's impacting directly our lives. So that politics is local, it's happening here.
Yeah.
And that'll tie in later as we talk about it. As a person who ran as an independent because I refused to sign a pledge to any special interest group.
Yeah.
I was there, a person standing alone or with other independents against a well-funded army of opposition. And that's really difficult, because you don't have a consistent message. You don't have an organization behind you. You don't have that branding. You don't have that funding. And it was different. And yard signs don't vote. I get it. But when there's 200 yard signs for this, and you've got, you could do your fundraising and buy that pack of 25, it's difficult. Yeah. So that's just one aspect of the challenges. So local issue, really entrenched opposition taking over and really inserting views that may be popular among a small subset of the population, right, but they're getting their base to come out and vote.
And it's just very highly emotional stuff too. It sounds like it's just infiltrating your community, and it's not healthy. It's not good.
It is. And, I mean, when you see memes or talking points put out on Facebook by political operatives that are saying, well, this can't happen in our community, but yet you do the research and realize that was a snapshot taken by a national organization from a high school in Seattle, but yet it's meant to appear as if it's happening in your backyard and you need to stop it today. Some people would call that deceptive.
It's
not right.
Very unethical marketing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's certainly, if the end game is to energize your base and to put the fear of God in them that they need to act before we stop these people from doing these things, then I guess it's working, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
no, totally.
unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of already touched on my next question, but why is the two-party system not working? Like what is the kind of biggest problem, and why do we need to, start something new?
Sure. I mean, two things that I'll say to that. The two-party system isn't working for me because, as a person who, as I've said, is conservative on some things and liberal on others, I didn't fit within a party where I would be told, well, you can't believe that or you can't say that on either side. We'll let you in, but you have to get rid of these beliefs, or you have to conform to this, or here's the talking points that we're going to give you, and you need to repeat these. That's not me. That's not me. So the two-party system didn't work because I'm not allowed to be that open-minded, partnering person who wants to speak and understand someone who has an opposing view. It doesn't mean that I agree, but I need to understand them so that we can come to some kind of agreement of where we do overlap and find a solution. That is a forwardist, right?
Exactly.
It's not about, I have more people, I win, so I get everything I want. I mean, to me, it's inconceivable that if we have members of Congress that are split by numbers and the votes align exactly to the numbers, these people are just being told what to do and think. And that's not what I want in a political leader. I want independent thought. I want someone who's going to look forward for me. So that's what I want. So that's the one thing. The second thing is, because of these ideas that one might say are controversial, so to speak, because they involve compromise. I mean, the day that we live in today, the idea of compromising is a controversial issue. So the solutions that we need, that the majority of Americans want, fall somewhere in the middle. And because of the power of the extreme elements within the existing parties, those ideas are not going to be allowed to come to fruition because it's just taking them in the wrong direction. So we're never going to get solutions to some of these big issues that people want to see addressed today unless there's another party in the middle who, first of all, has the process and approach to engage these ideas and take them on, and secondly, embrace the idea of working with people with different views within parameters, right?
Exactly.
That can define what that solution would be. And I think that's a huge differentiator for Forward, right? We are going to embrace the idea that we encourage that outside the box thinking of how we can do things differently. I mean, I would say, my co-state lead in Rhode Island, Sarah, she comes from the Democratic side. I come from the Republican side. She lives in the northern part of the state. I live in the southern part of the state. She's more of a millennial. I'm clearly not. We represent different viewpoints, but that's the thing that makes it so amazing, that she and I can talk about these things and learn from each other and adjust our views as we see appropriate and find that area that we can get a solution we both agree with.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, that's been my experience too. It's just really like a great feeling to be able to actually coexist with people who have different ideas and different perspectives than you, and actually still work to find that solution that you both can live with, right?
Yeah.
And, also, I want to kind of double click on, there's so much nuance to solutions too. Like, the solution for gun violence in Rhode Island is going to be drastically different than a solution in California, right? Like you were saying, there's not that much gun violence in Rhode Island. So,
well, knock on wood, fortunately, we don't have that. We don't have that experience of having, and it's, one does not even say it. I mean, as a council member, I was involved with some projects of using our American Rescue Plan money to look at how we could, COVID decimated our schools, it decimated the approach, and we were looking at ways of aligning it to find ways of funding safety in our school and really improving the environment with the kids that needed it. School safety to us is a requirement to the kids, but it's a stress for them. We all remember as kids the drills that we would do, but it was always far away. My generation hid under the desk from a nuclear explosion, right? But that was far away. for them, a lockdown drill is ever present in their day, right? So Rhode Island has not had that same track record, but we're right next to Connecticut, who so unfortunately has had those instances. But there's a lot of people in the state that we've taken not a legislative approach of addressing these issues, but more of a social engagement opportunity. So our view on that, I mean, it's an important issue. I think the common sense view in Rhode Island would be what we hear about background checks and waiting periods and red flag laws, and looking at anything that addressing the mental health issue as well.
Yeah.
And making sure that we know who has what, but not restricting the right of ownership. That would be the Rhode Island view, which, if you look at that, that's going to really mesh with that majority of Americans. I mean, that's just, it's common sense. It's common sense.
Yeah.
What it does is it threatens special interests on both sides. So, and that's where you get the pushback. So
yeah, the common sense solution is not that profitable in the two-party system. So
yeah, there's always something, some power piece that's behind it. So
yeah, absolutely.